What's up and welcome back to Nowstalgia Pod, giving you another week of what's going on in pop culture. My name is Pat Sheehan, joined by my trusty movie-going co-host Dave Martin Swagger. Dave, how you doing, man?
The movies are back, baby. They've been back.
They've been back, and you're getting to all of them. We're gonna be reviewing 4 movies today, and I only got to 2, so this is a Dave. Dave is carrying the pod on his shoulders as per usual, to be honest. But we're also gonna be talking some
Married to the game, baby.
Before we get into all this, soundcloud.com/nostalgiapod and youtube.com/nostalgiapod. We have a lot of fun things to talk about today. But Dave, as the world opens back up and festivals have returned, controversy has come with it and some tragedy as well. This past Friday night, Astroworld 2021 going down in Houston. Obviously, Travis Scott's festival, so going down in Houston makes a lot of sense. Was marked and shut down early by 8 deaths. I think the reports now have over 100 people who have gone to the hospital as a result of stampeding or pushing towards the stage, overcrowding, people being trampled. It's under investigation, obviously, but it was really like a weird thing to wake up to Saturday and see all this. As videos and reports have trickled out, just is like more and more like harrowing how dire the situation was and how little control and help there seemed to be. And it's also, I think, just as people have gone to a festival, and especially, you've gotten up close. I've been in my younger years up close to the stage and been in that push sometimes. Just kind of like shocking to hear how serious this got very quickly. What was your just like general reaction when you first heard?
Not only have I gone to a festival a few times, I've seen Travis Scott at a festival. Obviously, ridiculous. Not something you expect to happen. I mean, it harkens back to like Altamont and like Woodstock '99 and like shit that we just assumed was in the past. Thankfully, right? And the first thing that I started to think about was like, oh, Astroworld Festival. This is only its 3rd year in existence. This just kind of seems like some Bush League shit happened. Like this would not happen at a festival managed by Golden Voice. No way.
Yeah, no.
And there's a lot of things to think about and fingers to point. But I think a lot of it is just that this is a festival that was not handled properly. And, I think a lot of people are bringing this up. Astroworld in the past, I believe 2019, the last time they did it, there were some issues with like people rushing the security checkpoint and like just like a rowdiness that seemed to overwhelm the security. Again, just something that's like quite unacceptable at this kind of public event because we know how successful and safe festivals of 100,000 plus people can be done. So why wasn't that done this time? It just brings a lot of unfortunate questions because I mean, kids should not die at a music festival. It's absurd.
Right, and I think that's something we should add to the report is that all 8 people have been identified at this point, and the age range is from 14 to 27 years old. And in terms of people who've gone to the hospital as a result of the incident on Friday night, someone as young as 10 has been put into the hospital and is in critical condition at this time. So, it's definitely, I think, confusing and surprising. It's not like Astroworld is just Travis Scott backing all this money. I mean, Live Nation is behind this, and they're a seasoned promotion and production company who should be able to put on a festival like this. And there were reports from 2019, the first year that they did it, that there were people storming the gates. This seems to be a typical thing that happens at this festival at this point. There was videos of people doing it at this concert, this Astroworld Festival. And so you do get the sense from that security might have felt a little overwhelmed or understaffed in some way. Reports say that they had over 500 security people on staff. I don't know how many people are typically on staff for a festival this size, but the reports were that there were 50,000 people there, and all those people packed into one area. You would think that they would have to have some sort of crowd control procedure to go about this, and it just felt like no one took control of this situation until it got too bleak, and it happened really quickly.
Right. Yeah, there's a lot of reporting in the New York Times as everyone's trying to piece together, and as you said, the Houston Police Department's still investigating a lot of things about it. But when I looked at the set list, when I first, heard that it happened, I was looking at the set list. I was like, this does not seem awfully strategically staggered the way a festival is supposed to be to split people up. Obviously, everyone's more or less going to be congregating for Travis at the end. That's inevitable. But during the day, it didn't seem that wise. And if you read the reporting from New York Times, people were starting to go to the medical tent in the afternoon, way before Travis started. And obviously, that happens all the time, whether it's dehydration, someone's fucked up on booze, drugs, whatever it is, that's going to happen. But it seemed to be that there's just a higher level of that. It's not like Astroworld is a place where people are getting fucked up any more than any other festival. I really doubt that's the case, you
Right.
know? So yeah, I mean, in the reporting, they noted like there was, a lot of like emergency plans, and they had done more with barriers and stuff. So like doing a better job was definitely on the mind of who was
Mhm.
doing this. And yet this still happens, and I think a lot of the talk now has been about Travis Scott's own role in this. Obviously, as part of the organizers behind it, I think obviously just leadership wise, a lot of blame that we've just talked about. But also then there's his role as the performer. I believe
Mhm.
there's some viral videos on social media that have highlighted kids from the pit trying to flag security down to stop the show. Travis didn't seem to understand that was happening or wanted to push through regardless. So I believe when the first deaths were reported, he still performed another like 30 minutes or something along those lines. So a lot of I guess a lot of unknowns still about
Yeah.
how Travis the performer fits into that, but he definitely didn't help the matters. He does have that bully pulpit like all performers do. You can stop the show, and people have been showing stuff from Foo Fighters or ASAP Rocky at Complex
Yep.
Con this very weekend. You can briefly stop the show and like, hey, pick those people up,
Mhm.
And obviously, big C, tens of thousands of people. It's hard for the performer to see everything going on, but also I feel like he started to see ambulance lights eventually, right? And didn't seem to acknowledge it.
Yeah, there the videos. When he first stopped the show, and he actually says to the music, like he tells it to stop, and then says, "Just play in soft, and we'll bring it back up."
Mm,
And tells the security or the medics to get over to a certain spot, certain person. Then just starts singing again. That's been a viral video. It's also a video, like you mentioned, where he can see the ambulance in the crowd, and then he immediately tells everybody to put both hands up, right? And it's just really tough. It's hard to say. I've never been in his position where I'm performing at night with this many people. There's a lot of commotion, a lot of movement. If he saw it, if he didn't, I assume he must have known something was off to the point where he's telling the music to stop, people to go over to a certain area.
right.
It just is it's hard, I think, to make sense of the statements that come out afterwards where him and Kylie Jenner both made statements saying that they weren't aware of what was going on. No, of course they wouldn't have been performing through this or, recording videos if they knew the severity of things. Um, but when you're the lead performer for this festival, when you're the face of the festival, it does feel like there needs to be a little bit more accountability. Obviously, at this
Mm.
point, his lawyers are in his ears saying, "Don't
Oh,
say
he's
sorry,
already
don't."
getting sued. Like that's already
Yeah.
happening.
So I know that he has to be tight-lipped at this point. Um, so it's a very like difficult thing I think to make sense of, and there's going to be weeks and weeks of investigation into this. And
Right.
like you said, legal battles are certainly on the horizon. He's canceled his performances at future festivals at this point. Um, I mean, we're not getting that album, right?
No, Utopia or the dystopia mixed in. Oh, they ain't coming. We
Yeah.
know that.
So it's
Um,
very tough.
yeah, everyone's getting refunds. Travis, as well as, or even earlier, Roddy Rich, someone who wasn't a headliner, offered to pay for services for the victims, things like that.
Mm.
One thing you hear about it, right? And it's like I, I've kind of like a lot. There's like a lot of anecdotal thoughts I've had. It's like I do feel like a lot of young people might not be super trained in festival etiquette in terms of being in a large concert. You read some of the quotes from kids that were trying to get things done. There were people like getting trampled or collapsed on the ground that were not getting picked up by the people around
Mm.
them. At the end of the day, the people in the pit need to help keep you safe if
Yeah.
you can't keep yourself safe anymore, right? Like it's a lot of that, and obviously, like the way it sounds, the walls were closing in from the sides. That's how the crush happened.
Mm.
That's basically out of everyone's control in the middle. I know that, but I mean, that's not a great look if like the people around you didn't help you up,
Yeah.
and then again, that probably falls on security to try and pick out the fucked up people and kick them out earlier in the day.
Mhm.
It's a big fucking mess, and
There,
unfortunately, just all the reporting we had about Rolling Loud New York being like incredibly over policed, almost with a racial undertone as a hip hop festival um, theme for Rolling Around New York.
mhm.
I think coupling that with what has just happened now, the loss of life, I wonder what future festivals, especially ones aimed at very young people with rap, I wonder how that's going to go at this point.
Yeah, yeah. That's something that came to mind for me. I mean, we're having a regular conversation about the state of festivals, and festivals have done very well post COVID. That was a prediction that we both got very wrong.
Yep.
And I think now that we've had these two in weekends very close to each other, it kind of throws into question again, like how are things going to change? What's it going to look like? To bring it back to Travis just real quick, there's been a lot of Travis slander coming out. I mean, obviously, when something like this happens, people are more likely to take pot shots or get things off their chest to kind of heap on to a
Mhm.
person at this time. But I think one critique that has been kind of ringing true to me is just how Travis is like known for I wouldn't say inciting violence, but just inciting rowdiness at
Yeah.
these
The
concerts.
rage.
Yeah, encouraging people to just
Hmm.
let go, be rambunctious. He's yelled at security before for stopping
Hmm.
people from rushing stages. So I do feel like there's some like almost like inevitability to not necessarily this, but there being some sort of incident at a Travis Scott event that was going to look bad at some point and probably get out of hand. But to get to this level is just absolutely tragic and
Yeah.
so devastating.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of people probably go to Astroworld, and the people fly in. It's not like it's just a Houston thing by any means. It's a national festival, of course. People go because they're huge fans of Travis Scott and they want to fucking get lit with La Flame. That is the energy, and he has a great reputation as a live performer. And part of that is high energy. I mean, again, like in a positive light, I remember seeing songs that are not super high energy of his studio wise. When he performs them, they're fucking nuts, like stargazing or something. That's just what he does. And on the other hand, I've been in situations where the artist told me to rush and me and the whole crowd rushed. I saw Tyler Creator in 2013 and we were standing on the fucking seats pushing. He said, fuck, he's like, fuck security. And we're like, you know what? Fuck it. And we did. And what happened? They cut the fucking mic and made us all go back or they were going to cancel the show. Kid Cudi
Mhm.
came out ahead of time and it's like, hey guys, this is fun, but we got to go back. And everyone's like, okay, yeah. You know,
Yeah.
like there's ways to control the energy of the crowd. So it's really sad, honestly, and just an unacceptable outcome.
Yeah. Not good for music, not good for anybody here. Major rip to those 8 people and speedy recovery to all those who were sent to the hospital or impacted. Well, why don't we move on to some happier news though, which is we got a new Aminé album, Dave. Uh Aminé is an artist that I think we both really liked
Mm.
for quite a while now, but really with his last couple projects have just felt like he's really finding his lane and starting to like master it, and it just almost has felt like a level up recently. Now we get 2.5. Do you feel like Amine has continued to build on that momentum? Did
Hmm.
2.5 feel like a settling? Where were you at with it?
Yeah, I mean, much like the 1.5 mixtape, this is, and his own words, Aminé's own words, lower stakes, more experimental music for the fans in between albums. The way I used to make music in my bedroom, just having fun, stream of conscience type thing. That being said, production wise, this is much more different than anything he's done before. So in terms of just a low stakes mixtape while you make the third album, I think this is pretty tantalizing, honestly.
Yeah, I don't think that this is like my favorite Amine work yet.
No.
But I really there were some songs and some like uh back to back runs on this where I just was like, this is really interesting stuff. This is really pleasurable to listen to. And that kicks off for me pretty much right away with Neo. Like it's the
Yes.
single off the mixtape, but man, just like it's just like a really light, airy, boppy song, and he
Yeah.
just rides that thing the
Beats
whole
fucking
time.
good.
Yeah, the beat is fantastic. It's really crisp, which I really appreciate. Just really stood out. And then going to Okay With Me right after that, I thought was just a wonderful back to back on the track list. Okay With Me has that like clap drum sound to it over and over, which I just really, really dug. So I don't know. I thought that was really cool. And you hear him singing a little bit in that, which is, he does that
Hmm.
sometimes, but it feels a little bit more. It feels like we got a bit more of that on this album. What else stood out to you? What
Yeah,
other
totally.
moments?
Yeah, I mean the beats, it's like these are like hyper pop beats,
Mhm.
And I think he's riding them well because he's doing just simple rhymes, rhyme schemes, simple raps. And it shines on something like Neo. It shines on something like Charmander. I
Mhm.
guess the rapping on Charmander's pretty familiar to Amine fans, but still sounds good because the beat's really cool, and that flow matching with that beat sounds really nice. Um, Speaking to what you said about like, singing more on like Van Gogh, he's pitching up his vocals a little bit more on a beat that sounds like it's from like a nursery rhyme or some shit. It's like Mine doing hyper pop is not something I had really thought about before as something to think about or project for the future, and yet he just kind of fucked around and made some pretty cool.
Yeah. Charmander also a clear standout to me. And that's followed up by Mad Funny Freestyle, which I thought was really
Yeah,
interesting beat, which I also really enjoyed. I thought that was pretty good. So
yeah.
um I don't know. Is there any other tracks that stood out to you a lot?
No, I guess those are my favorites. I'd say Neo for sure is definitely like
Yeah.
that. That's the one. But on Charmander, I just again simple ass raps, but born for this like Matt Dame, Red Whip, look like Chastain. Simple ass reference point, and yet I'm here for it.
Yeah. No, Amine just continues to be a really enjoyable person to follow and a rapper to follow. So can't wait for that next album. But 2.5 is a nice holdover for now, I'd say. So check out our Nostalgia Best of 2021. We already have Charmander, might be throwing another track on there. But Dave, let's move on to Summer Walker, who, if I recall, when she dropped over it, we did review that. And I believe our take. Do we not? I can't
I
remember
don't
because there
know.
was a run. Man, there was a run when it was like her and Ari Lennox and Georgia Smith were all
Mm,
dropping albums, and,
Tiana.
and they were Tiana, and we just were like hitting all this R&B, and it was like this like smooth R&B. I felt like we reviewed it, maybe we didn't,
Yeah, I mean I've
but
listened to it. I listened to it, but I don't know if we
I
did.
think my I think my general take with Summer Walker has just been like, okay, like she's pretty good, but she hasn't really popped for me yet, I guess.
Yeah.
I think some of her contemporaries are a little more intriguing to me. Georgia Smith, specifically,
Mm.
but this album still over it. I mean, biggest R&B album since 2016 by a female artist,
It's heading that
since
way.
Lemonade.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
really impressive. Do you feel like the music matches the sales for this?
Yeah. I mean, like you say, over it previously. Biggest first week streaming numbers for a female R&B artist, ahead of Lemonade. People are into Summer Walker. She is very popular at this point. But I kind of had similar thoughts. I have not been super into it. Not that I dislike it. It just feels like modern day R&B to me. And I don't listen to a lot of R&B normally, so it's like, it's not like rising above the pale or anything. And that's still kind of how I felt. I'm still over it. I think the production is really nice on this though, so like the songs she's making, I feel like are still high level, and there's some more like poppier stuff on here that grabs my attention a little bit more. But if you really listen to it, if you're really into this kind of thing, there's some really choppy, blunt lyrics that has been getting a lot of comments online. Been seeing a lot of male R&B fans clamoring for someone like Brent Faiyaz to come back soon and even the score, because dudes are getting raked over the coals on this one, specifically her ex, London on the Track, the producer.
Yeah, who produces most of these tracks.
Yeah.
That I have to imagine that was a pretty funny recording session with her just like flaming him the whole time. He's just probably back there like turning knobs like with like a scowl on his face. That's how I'd like to imagine it. Obviously, probably not how it went down, but yeah, it's funny. This is a 20-track album, and I think my opinion of her certainly shifted, because I definitely think there's a couple of tracks, couple of moments that I really was like impressed by, especially production wise, but just overall was found this to be way more than I expected it to be. But I still don't know if she's I still don't know if for me she reaches that tier of artist where I'm like, oh, I'm totally bought in. Um, Bitter, the first track with Cardi B, I think would premiered at number one on the top 10 Apple Music chart, even before pre-sale. And I think the track's all right, but I think the album really starts to take off on the second track, X for a Reason with JT from Sydney Girls.
Yeah.
I thought that track was really great. Goes right into the track with SZA. And I think that's the thing is I was really more interested in the collaborations. When Ari Lennox shows up on Unloyal, I thought that track was a real like breath of fresh air, and like really perked my ears up. Hearing them go back and forth was great. The track with Pharrell, like every track with Pharrell on these sorts of albums, stands out like a sore thumb, and you're just like, man, I don't know how this like how this got on here. I don't hate it. I don't know if I necessarily loved it, but it's very Pharrell, very Neptune's production. I thought Lil Durk and her sounded pretty good together on Toxic. Like, I didn't really like the Omarion song, but I thought the features really stood out to me. Did you have that same feel? Like you were almost like living for the features on this album in some sense?
Yeah, again, like when it's that many songs, and
Right.
unless it's like a really like big beat to catch my attention, it's just gonna sound like R&B to me, and I'm not like a huge R&B guy, so it's to be expected. I actually did like the Pharrell song just because
Oh, really?
it stood out. Yeah, that bouncing bass, I was like, okay, I'm into this. Pharrell's brilliant on the track, to be honest, as
Yeah,
a
that's true.
performer, so it's cool.
Yeah, I think for me it's just like every time there's like an R&B album like this, it's like he gets one track to produce and make, and it just is so different. I'm always just like, all right, this is the Pharrell song, but
Mm.
I don't hate it. Like I said, it's just always just stands out. What other tracks stood out to you, or what did you like most on
Yeah,
this?
I'd say they were the best song probably from a writing perspective. I agree. I like X for a Reason a lot. Like I think that one's like really easy to run back. But from like a writing perspective, Fourth Baby Mama right at the end
Yeah,
stands out a lot just because that's where the most cutting, matter of fact lyrics are coming from. So
mm,
and that's getting a lot of attention online, understandably.
yeah, definitely. I think that song stood out lyrically. I don't know. Summer Walker, do you see her like elevating herself with this? I mean, it's obviously that the sales are there. She's got the fan base. Does she elevate as an artist to you?
No, no. And I don't really know what the ceiling is either because she's already doing the thing.
Yeah.
Putting up numbers, so like I don't know like what's next from this, like this isn't going to get like critically like super adored by anything. Then again, can she go for some of those R&B Grammy categories? Yeah, she's got a good chance of winning them as anyone else, honestly, so that's great for her. um But yeah, I mean, because that's the thing. It's like you look at that feature list. Obviously, Summer Walker is very hip hop, even though she's an R&B singer, like many R&B singers these days.
Mhm.
I don't see her like rising up to the next level of hip hop in terms of like reverence, but she's still really popular. So I don't know. It's hard to see her like blowing up beyond this because her songs don't necessarily lend themselves to like being hits. Like
Yeah.
the first big hit back in 2018 that took off. Girls Need Love that took off once Drake hopped on the remix, of course. But like, unless Drake does that again, I don't know like how she would get like a number one song or anything like that.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I mean, I already kind of said it, but I don't know if this elevates her as an artist, but I think just she's very popular. She puts out some good tracks. Like she's gonna be successful and around for a while. So
Mm.
definitely stay tuned for her. Why don't we move forward though to someone else that dropped their sophomore album, Snail Mail, Lindsey Jordan. We reviewed Lush a few years ago. Uh, we liked Lush a lot. Pristine, especially, I think, stands out from that album for me. I think that song is like an absolute masterpiece. And Snail Mail in general, I think, really just in the same vein as like someone like Soccer Mommy. I think really talented, unique voice. Which in the sphere of indie rock women, there's a lot of sameness, and not always super interesting sameness. So, really appreciating that Snail Mail always kind of finds something that stands out. Um, Valentine came out the single a couple weeks back, and man, I freaking loved that song and still love that song. Definitely vying for the top 10 for me this year. So a lot of hype for me going into this album. Gotta say, I don't think it disappointed. I was pretty impressed with the album as a whole. And so now we get the album Valentine. And Dave, I'm always curious to see where you were at with this. Knowing you're not the biggest indie rock fan in general, how did you feel listening to Snail Mail's Valentine?
Yeah, so I wasn't like the biggest fan of Lush just because I thought it was a little soft for my liking, but I was quite impressed with Valentine. I thought it sounded really great, and it's nice to see someone on Matador Records kind of rise above and stand out. Because as you said, there's a lot of sameness with indie, especially
Mhm.
uh, female indie vocalists, right? Um, I think some of her label mates, Julian Baker, Lucy Dacus, everyone's kind of finding their niche, finding their little corner of indie
Mhm.
and becoming stars in the
Yeah.
genre, right? And Snail Mail has been a minute, right? So, and yet she's only 22, so very impressive. Obviously, we'll watch her career with great interest, and I just thought this was like she goes pretty hard on some of these songs. I was quite impressed. As you said, the title track Valentine, that's a hard ass chorus. The
Yeah.
guitar goes. She's
Mhm.
jamming out in some of these. So I think there's several tracks that are really nice to revisit.
Yeah, the first two tracks are probably my favorite two tracks on the
Yeah.
whole thing. They both were singles, but Ben Franklin, the
Mhm.
bass on that is so
Yes.
like
The drum line.
plucky, modest, mousy that like I immediately perked up and was like, ooh, and especially switching that or having that right behind Valentine, which just like you said, the chorus goes so hard. The guitar in that, Lindsay is just absolutely shredding. Um, it's just like a stark switch up, but both songs really, really work. Um, and you get a couple of those like typical indie rock ballads that are just like a guitar plucking along, but not many of them. And a lot of the songs vary up and have standout moments from time to time. Something like Forever stood out to me a lot. Just like that, like shifting, like percussion in the background. I don't even really know how to explain it, but it's kind of like, but like it's drums somehow. I'm not even sure exactly what's going on there, but I really liked it. I liked Madonna a lot. Believe that was another single off this, but the guitar in that is just really good. And Lindsay obviously came up as a guitarist, and um, I think what Lush did was kind of show that she's more than just a performer in terms of guitar and can actually make some great songs, and seems to be leveling up on this. So, uh, yeah, really, really pleasurable album to listen to. What other tracks stood out to you?
Yeah, the only track I really like didn't care for was Light Blue, just because it's obviously like the slow song on the album.
Yeah, that's
But
what I was
everything
referring
else
to.
other than that is at a much higher tempo, faster tempo, and usually has like really like big drums or like noticeable guitar. So like everything keeps your attention. Like a song like Glory, the guitar just comes in right away. It's just it's nice and
Mm.
loud in a good way. I also liked Forever, as you mentioned, and yeah, Ben Franklin, man, like that 1-2 to start, up there with many good 1-2s this year. Like it's really great. Honestly,
I
this is
really,
probably one of my favorite indie rock albums in a while. Honestly, like in terms of like front to back, liking just about everything.
yeah, I really love her vocal delivery all throughout this. It's kind of like she's like every word is kind of all one word somehow. Like
Mm.
especially on a song like Ben Franklin, like that chorus, like na na na, hey, like it just is like so good the way she does it. I feel like no one really sings exactly like that, and it's so distinct and really, really works. Um, but yeah, I'm really impressed with her, man, and I hope we continue to see her working and putting stuff out because we talk a lot about that space, and you mentioned how each person's kind of finding their own, but like you had to say Phoebe Bridgers is probably like the one right now in the space, but Lindsay feels like she's making a real push, and Soccer Mommy I felt like had the crown for a time. I mean, really, we don't need to compare them and say like one's better than the other, but I think just in terms of popularity
Mm.
or who I feel is making the most interesting stuff, it feels like those are the three that I keep coming back to a lot. But
Yeah, yeah. I mean, Julian Baker, really, really sad. Tough for me to get into, revisit all the time. That's not to say that there's not emotion on Valentine. I mean, if you listen to Ben Franklin, brief reference to Lindsay being in rehab about a year ago.
mhm.
Tough to hear that from someone so young. But conversely, it seems like she was able to find inspiration to write this album. Again, it's been several years since the debut, and she's so young. You would have thought we would have had the second album sooner, and yet going back to her childhood bedroom kind of brought the best out of her and got her writing again. Very similar to how Clairo's most recent album came to be recently. Pandemic and going back home seemed to work out well creatively. So obviously, Snail Mail, top of the list in terms of people to pay attention to. There's a lot of names as you just said, but um, to make this at only 22 is quite impressive.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, Again, check out our Nostalgia Best of 2021 playlist, where we'll probably be throwing Ben Franklin on there. It sounds like Valentine is already on that. Dave, A24 though, man, they make good stuff. A film I didn't get to, Souvenir Part II, but you did, and so I wanted to just kind of pick your thoughts. As it wasn't released in many theaters, right?
15 theaters this past weekend after
Ooh.
3 the previous weekend. So a very platform, intentionally limited release from A24.
And we both, I think, really, I wouldn't say really like, but I think we appreciated and found the Souvenir from 2019 to be a really competently made film that also just I think surprised me for just how like gutting it felt at times, and especially with um who was the star, Honor Swinton Byrne, obviously giving one of her first like star performances.
Right.
So did part two live up to the Souvenir part one?
Yeah. So, I mean, it stands out right away as one of the rare indie film sequels, right? It's
Yeah.
not something we think of all that much, right? I guess you have like Linklater's Before trilogy comes to mind, but
Mhm.
other than that, they're rare, right? But also
Mhm.
like a sequel to The Souvenir, interesting. Like you said, it's a movie that is definitely impressive, but like you got to like really get absorbed in like what's going on thematically in a movie like that, you know? It's it's very specific. Joanna Hogg, semi-autobiographical tale about a young woman in 80s London going to film school while also falling in love. It's and I think the key difference though would be that spoilers for the Souvenir, but Tom Burke's character dies at the end, right? He ODs on heroin. He's a heroin addict. Souvenir Part II picks us right up with where Souvenir Part One ends, and it's what was her name? Julie, Honor Burns' character, just kind of
Yep.
dealing with that fallout while also preparing to make her student film that she had talked about in the first film. And I think what's really fascinating about this movie is how that there's a key change from movie 1 to 2, where Julie kind of scraps her original film plan and decides to basically recreate the plot of the Souvenir Part 1 for her student film within the Souvenir Part 2. Very like meta thing going on here.
Yeah.
And for her film, she creates the set of the apartment of which we spent all that time in Part 1. So if you remember the Souvenir, you'll be very like kind of whisked back to what's going on. And it's pretty fascinating, like having her be this director trying to tell her young performers, her colleagues, and like her crew how to make her vision happen that just had happened to her in her real life, like weeks prior in the story. And in terms of like coming of age, like it's kind of a fascinating like way to close the loop uh on this. And Joanna Hogg, kind of like reimagining how her film career could have went. She did not start making movies too much older in life. Obviously, Julie getting a movie made as a film student, very different paths here. And yeah, just the whole like kind of like memoirness of it. It's definitely different than the first one because again, like you don't have that Tom Burke presence, so you don't have this like key relationship kind of butting heads and blossoming and then fading out. Like you don't have any of that. It's very like postscript of the first movie. So it's definitely I think a must watch if you've seen the Souvenir, and it's quite audacious and you know uh, ballsy to approach I guess a sequel in this manner. At one point, Robert Pattinson was supposed to have a role in this movie. He had to drop out due to scheduling conflicts. He was replaced with Charlie Heaton. Ends up being a small role. Heaton's fine, good enough. But I mean, obviously, Rob would have elevated his, 10 minutes in the movie, as we know.
Sure.
Joe Alwyn also has a small scene in this, but a lot's rested on Honor Swinburne's shoulders because she doesn't have Tom Burke sharing so many scenes with her. So it's a lot of Julie kind of emoting or not emoting, right? So like the movie, both these movies, they don't really tell you how to feel about things. You kind of gotta like go with it. Go with the journey and be an active participant, right? So it's definitely not for everyone, obviously. But Souvenir Part II, I mean, I didn't really have any expectations going in because it's like a movie when the sequel's announced. I was like, oh, huh, interesting.
Yeah.
And then Pattinson got attached, and I was like, oh, interesting.
Ooh, yeah.
But it's fascinating movie, honestly.
I think I really appreciate and think it's a brilliant idea to have her making the story of the first one in the second part, because it's almost like her, or basically is her exploring her trauma in like a very like tangible way, which
Exactly.
is obviously just a really interesting and intriguing plot device. So love that writing. Can't wait to check it out. Sounds like you give it at least a watchable mark. So I'm excited to see what we get there. I'm actually a little more excited to hear what you thought about Spencer, another movie that you got to this weekend that I wasn't able to, which, from my understanding, documents a weekend where Diana, Princess of Wales, is that what she was? Princess of Wales, right?
Yeah.
Something like that. Where Princess Diana was away for the weekend with Charles and the rest of the royal family. And it's kind of like these, like, what, 3 days or something like that away. And of course, I think Princess Diana, I don't give much of a fuck about the royals, to be honest. But Diana, obviously, I think is more interesting to us. Her lore and her persona, I think, um, out outlives a lot of the negatives about them, and because she seems to be kind of her own person, apart from the whole royal hullabaloo. I mean, to say,
Right.
and this is being tapped as a potential Oscar worthy performance from Kristen Stewart of Twilight fame. Obviously,
Yeah.
doing a lot more sense then, but
Yeah.
she'll probably never get fully out of that shadow. Did you find this to be worthy of an Oscar nomination?
Yes. Yeah, Kristen
Wow.
Stewart's absolutely tremendous in this movie. Definitely a Best Actress nominee. I'd say lock at this point.
Lock.
Judging what the field looks like, judging what people are saying, Kristen Stewart's gonna be nominated. Whether she wins, too early to say. But I think there's so much momentum for her with this role because it's a great performance. And uh, I mean, you mentioned Twilight. People used to say it's a Robert Pattinson as well, but they both have been making lots of really good and or at least very interesting choices since they left that franchise when it ended. We've gotten shades of Kristen Stewart in Personal Shopper, and even a movie that's not super great like Seabird. Well, you can tell like there are real chops here. There's real intention with her choices, and to pair up with Pablo Larraín, the Chilean filmmaker who recently made Jackie about Jackie Kennedy with Natalie Portman, to pair up with Pablo Larraín and make one of these singular biopics in a sense again on Larraín's part. Very impressive, but also really smart, I'd say. And just as a quick bookend, people have been saying this recently. Larraín is the one to do the Britney movie because he has done the chops, he has done the work, he has demonstrated that he can handle a public female figure who has had a tough go of it and a complicated relationship with the press. I think obviously we'll need a lot of time before that movie comes to be, but that would be pretty interesting.
I was gonna
Um,
say, who plays Brittany? Sydney Sweeney at this point.
yeah, I'm not even ready to think about that part yet, but we have the
Yeah.
director. And yeah, like you said, this is set in I believe like 91, 92 Christmas time at a Sandrangan house, which is
Ah,
royal property that they go there every Christmas holiday. It's a tradition, and
Spencer is a Christmas movie. Interesting, Dave.
right, and this is several years before Diana's untimely passing, but well into the fallout of her relationship with Charles. It's gone cold. He's been cheating on her with Camilla, so like that's hanging over the movie at this point, and the key thing with though, this is not like a traditional biopic. It is a psychological biopic. Kristen Stewart is in every scene of this movie. She's carrying everything, and it's basically just about her experience with just finding a way to get through a weekend with the family. In a sense, a bit relatable if you loathe the holidays with your relatives, because
I
that's
was gonna say,
exactly what this is.
this
Uh,
is a real Christmas movie. Then,
yeah,
amazing.
and but like Stewart is so great because she's conveying uh both like manicness about Diana in terms of how she was struggling with what was going on, the way it's the way it's been told, the way it's been interpreted, but also on the other hand she's like almost it's a very self-aware uh performance, as like she knows she kind of has to perform for the family, and just kind of just get through it because she does really love her kids, and the way they portray the toxicity of the stupid customs and traditions of the royals, however mundane they might be, the way they portray that just through Diana's like interactions and like rationalizations about what's going on. It's really really well done. It's like she, she does a great job of communicating with the claustrophobic nature of just being in the house and kind of feeling like she's being watched by the help, and they're kind of like they're snitching on her and all that. It's really, I think it's really cool. And you look at like the audience polling, it's not like super positive. And I think that's because, again, it's like a psychological movie.
Mhm.
It's not like it's probably not the Diana movie a lot of people want to see, quote unquote. And then we got Emma Corrin in The Crown. We're about to get Elizabeth Debicki in The Crown on Netflix. That's probably more of like the pulpy drama. This is what happened. See it dramatized, right? This is not really that, and I think it's really impressive. Honestly, some of the best scenes are Stewart with her kids. Young William, young Harry. Um, it's really great. A lot was made of the voice of her Diana voice, just the way a lot of people talked about Portman's Jackie voice, right? I think the voice is totally fine uh, as Diana. She doesn't. I guess she doesn't really look like Princess Diana all that much, but the performance is awesome. I mean, she starts seeing visions of Anne Boleyn, and seeing the
Hmm.
parallel in terms of Anne Boleyn's relationship to Henry
Interesting.
VIII or whoever it was, and her relationship to what's going on. There's a lot going on, but I think it's really well done. This is written by Stephen Knight, who definitely has an up and down track record as a screenwriter, but I think it's another home run for Neon. Obviously they've been crushing it lately in terms of making awards movies, and there's a lot of parallels you can see with what we know about how Meghan Markle had a go of it with the royals. You can kind of see some of that and just subtly in the way this movie's going on. So Stewart's definitely the main attraction and why you should want to see this. But in the movie itself, a little more high-minded than you might expect. So I definitely recommend Spencer.
I can't wait to check it out. Definitely wanted to get to it, just didn't work out for me. Just looking through the cast list, seeing Sally Hawkins, someone I haven't really thought about since
Yeah.
2017 with The Shape of Water. How much was she in the movie?
Yeah, so she's actually quite good. She has a small role, supporting role as one of like the dressers of
Mhm.
Diana, like the people that help her put on her
The
clothes
royal
and
dresser.
get ready for breakfast or whatever event they're doing. But like just their conversations, it's just a few conversations directly between them. Uh, Tremendous. I think some of the best writing. Like and Hawkins' character is kind of like helping Diana like get through that part of her day however she
Mhm.
might have been feeling. So yeah, she's great. Timothy Spall has a important role as like this figure in the house working for the Royals, trying to keep everything on time and keep it going right, custom wise. And uh, he kind of has this like lording, uh, almost creepy nature to him.
Hmm.
But it's never like overdone. I think it's an important role in the film. People obviously Timothy Spall's been a lot of things. You might recognize him as Peter Pettigrew and Harry
Yep.
Potter. Um, yeah, he was quite good. I mean, the guy who plays Charles, the woman who plays Queen Elizabeth, they have very few lines. Honestly, they're really barely in the movie. It's really
Mhm.
just Kristen Stewart almost every scene.
Nice. Well, I can't wait to check it out. Definitely. Sounds like we're going to be talking about her a lot more as the awards races ramp up. So check out Spencer. Drop your thoughts below if you're watching on YouTube and if you've seen it. I think a movie that a lot more people are going to have seen, though, Dave, is Harder They Fall, a movie by, I want to make sure I say this right, James Samuel. I think it might just be Samuel. Not
Yes, not
100%
sure.
sure.
The brother of
Um,
Seal.
yeah, and also a music artist himself.
Right.
Goes by the name The Bullets, which is a very interesting name, especially given the nature of this movie, which is a revisionist western. And I mean, there's a lot to like or a lot to sell people on for this movie. I mean, just the cast alone, Jonathan Majors Idris Elba, Zazie Beetz, Regina King, Delroy Lindo, Lakeith Stanfield. I mean, right there. How
Who's
are you
who?
not just bought in? But like then it being this western, the way it's shot is kind of like it feels like the old westerns. Like you kind of feel like you're on the movie set a lot of the time, and like I don't know, it felt like very like real to me a lot of ways at times. Um, I think there's some interesting choices that at points took me out of the movie, but overall, I was really impressed with this and had a great time. What did you think of The Harder They Fall?
Yeah, I had a great time as well. Obviously, the cast is the main attraction, as you'd expect when you read it, and it plays a lot of the hits you expect from Western films, but it's just done in a really effective way. It's it's stylized in a sense. You have modern music, you have modern dialogue, and yet it all just really works. I don't think it's like a transcendent Western by any means,
Hmm.
but it's just really well done and a great time. I think key as well. So you know, most people probably are invested in many of these performers at this point, and I think just about everyone acquits themselves pretty well. So it's a great time. And in terms of a Netflix film, I mean, it's one of their finest, honestly.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. It's hard for me to watch this movie and not think back to Django Unchained, just because
Mm,
I feel like so much of the stylization of it, obviously the like Midwest shooter vibe, but also I think just like the goriness of it, because this film is really, really gory. Um, I think that works for me at times and feels a bit overdone at times. You know, I'm not a big fan of animals dying in films, and right in the beginning, you see a horse just get shot right in the head, and I was like, "Oh God!"
need that cover, baby.
Yeah. Um, but I thought the action sequences were really really fun, especially the final one. But the train sequence was cool. Little cool Chadwick
Yes.
Boseman Easter egg there on the side of the train.
Hmm.
So yeah, I appreciate them paying respects. Um, why don't we start though with just I think the overall performances. Like, was there anyone in this film that you feel like really stood out to you in terms of the performance that they gave?
Yeah, I'd say for like the top end people, it's like it's none of like their best roles by any
Mhm.
chance, but they all just kind of bring a level of confidence, a stature that you expect, and it's all done pretty well. If anyone, I'd say RJ Seiler probably stood out to me, who's someone he's popped up in the past, like Miro and the Dying Girl. He was in the Power Rangers reboot
Mhm.
that didn't go anywhere. He's been around, but he gets to chew on being a guy who can't shut up and loves to showboat. It was
Yeah.
a really fun character.
Yeah, he was really fun. I hated the way he died, but it definitely hammers home why you're supposed to hate Lakeith Stanfield's character. So really
Cherokee Bill.
appreciate that. Yep. I thought Lakeith really stood out in this. He just seemed to be having the best time, man. Just being this slimy, backstabbing, fastest gun in the West type guy, but really only because he's a piece of shit and doesn't follow any of the unwritten rules of these duels.
Sure.
Yeah, but I really liked him. I thought he stood out.
Yeah.
Um, I
I know.
also thought.
Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. I just really like Zazie Beats as well.
Mm.
I feel like a lot of the roles we've seen her in um, outside of Atlanta have been a bit one note, and she just got to do a lot in this movie. And it also kind of seems like they're setting up a potential sequel that may be more focused around her
Mm.
moving forward. So, hoping we get something like that. But just those two really stood out to me. What were you gonna say though?
Uh, yeah. I mean, I was just thinking, Lakeith. I really liked his presence in particular because he managed to bring like the veteran savvy that's supposed to be with his character. I like that. It's a little different spin than we've gotten from some of his characters recently. I agree about Zazie Beats. Nice to see her just have a little more to do, honestly. Um, you know, Regina King kind of overqualified for her her role, but again, you could tell she was having a nice time. Gets to scrap with Zazie at the end. That's fun.
Yeah.
Uh, I'd say Jonathan Majors. He's still absolutely shredded since Defy Bloods. Dude looks great, and just happy to see him leading a movie because he's a stud, and we've been invested only a few years now, but he's just had such a rapid rise. It's awesome to see. Uh, Again, he went from being nominated for a breakthrough actor performance for Last Black Man in San Francisco to playing the next Marvel big bad in like a year and a half. It's been quite the rise for the guy. But happy to see him just add this to the belt, because it's fun. If anything, I don't know if you had this, but some of his vocal delivery, I was like, I couldn't quite tell what he was saying. Like he was really
Yeah.
like like trying to like give himself a bit of an accent, and I feel like some of the lines I couldn't quite grasp sometimes.
Yeah, it felt like he was almost like hissing his words or like I don't know, like they got jumbled almost. But
Hmm.
yeah, I agree with that. I actually really liked Idris in this. It felt a bit like his Stringer Bell performance in a way, which is always fun. It's kind of like menacing, but also not like too in your face, except for probably the scene where he beats the shit out of the mayor or whoever that
Yeah,
was.
brutal.
I mean, yeah, really brutal. Did you see the twist coming at the end? I did
No,
not.
no, and that's probably one of my issues with the film is that twist just comes way too late to make like a strong impact.
Yep.
It doesn't really like if that twist didn't happen, the ending is fundamentally the same.
Mhm.
The character feels the same way, you feel the same way about what you've seen. I felt like it just kind of came a little late to make an impact, but I didn't see it coming.
Yeah, I agree. It would have almost been nice if you had Jonathan Majors character, Nat Love, get that information before he chose to go and save Zazie Beats. Only because I think it would have he still would have gone, but obviously how they would have gone about it may have changed. Um, but yeah, I was kind of like, you don't really get a chance to process. And even at the end, it seems like he's still processing. When
Right.
Zazie asks him, "Is the devil dead?" and he says, "I don't know." So that's kind of what leads me to believe there's probably a sequel coming of some sort. In the prior to um, some delays in production due to COVID, Cynthia Erivo, Wesley Snipes, and Sterling K. Brown were supposed to be in it. So maybe we'll get them in a sequel of
Huh.
some sort. Would really love that. Um, yeah, I mean, what other moments stood out? I really liked the train scene a lot. I thought, like, just stylistically, the colors in that really popped out, like blues and stuff. And then obviously you get an awesome entrance from Idris coming out of that uh, cell, just
Right.
like walking out. The standoff was great too. What else stood out to you though?
Yeah, I mean, I think thematically there's some cool things going on. Many of these characters are technically people from real life, people from the Old West. Uh, and it's kind of like a mishmash of bringing all these people together that were, like I think the Indian Territory and kind of all over the place, really post Civil War, Old West time.
Hmm.
And in a sense, it's cool, but also like none of like the actual traits or histories of these characters really seem to factor into the story we have. We just kind of like gave them names and treated them like action figures almost.
Hmm.
But I think it is cool to see this movie get made because it's not like a revisionist Western at all. It's actually just reminding people that there were lots of other kinds of cowboys beyond the traditional white cowboy we think of from John Wayne, John Ford. Just because we didn't really get movies about these cowboys all that much doesn't mean they weren't there. There were lots of black cowboys and lots of native cowboys as well. Just see a black cowboy story. There's really
Yeah.
nothing fictional about it. It's just something we haven't gotten, unfortunately, enough of at this time. On the other side of that, I loved the white town scene. I thought that was
Mm.
awesome. Visual gag is hilarious. It's literally a white town with a white
Yeah.
sand. Production design immaculate. But just
Hmm.
yeah, just a really charming bank robbery scene on Major's part.
Yeah. Sometimes our taste is too similar because I love that speech he gives where he says, he's like says something like, "Oh, I love your eyes, blue eyes," or something like that, with like a little like sly grin. And then he's like, "You're handshaking. You're scared. You're gonna miss." Just like talks him through like why he's just let him walk out. Just like a really awesome scene. Um, And also, yeah, Cuffy. I really liked
Yes.
Cuffy's character. Obviously played by, just had it and I lost it. Sorry, Danielle Deadweiler, who hasn't had a lot of roles, so I think this is going to be a nice look for them. But yeah, that scene definitely stood out stylistically, but also for a great major scene. But really, the whole film is pretty fun. I think the one scene that really just felt out of place for me and didn't work was just the lead up to Zazzy's interaction with Buck, Rufus Buck, where like that woman in like the really blue paint was dancing around, and like I was just like, I'm not really sure why this is in here or what's going on. It just felt like they wanted to do some weird stylistic stuff to make it feel like the city is or weird underneath his rule. I don't know, but I didn't have a lot of moments like that. So overall, I think this is definitely one that to tune into on Netflix. So um, definitely check it out. But David, I think it's time to talk about Marvel once again. Marvel's back, baby, with Eternals, and man, I guess when you just look at it at face, I'm trying to decide how to go about this. I think looking at it at face, right? You start with the most recent winner of the Best Director award at the
Yes.
Oscars, in Chloe Zhao. You get a stacked cast, absolutely stacked cast. Gemma Chan, who, what was the movie with that she was in earlier this year?
Let Them All Talk, the end of 2020. Soderbergh.
Yes, thank you. Oh, that was 2020. Wow.
December. Yeah.
Richard Madden, Bodyguard, Game of Thrones, an actor that
maybe Bond.
Yeah, we've tapped to potentially be Bond soon. Kumail, ripped Kumail.
Yes.
Brian Tyree Henry.
Hell yeah.
Barry Keoghan, the young king.
Yes. Angelina Jolie doing another
Kit
franchise.
Harington, Selma Hayek. I mean, you get
Don Lee, big Korean star.
Right. Yeah, you get some big star power here. So, on the surface, it feels like there's a lot of good ingredients here. This recipe is going to be delicious. And then we finally got to take a bite. And Dave, what'd you think?
I didn't like Eternals too much. It's not like terrible, but it's clearly the worst of the 3 Marvel films that came out this year. And there's been a lot of talk about this, right? The worst reviewed Marvel movie on Rotten Tomatoes, the worst cinema score of an MCU film, right? And I have some thoughts about that too. But ultimately, I think it's just a ambition versus execution issue is what failed Eternals, where everything they tried to achieve, a lot of it kind of outside the traditional MCU mold. Unfortunately, not enough of it actually works well enough to make the movie good. And it's just kind of a big swing, but it's more or less a whiff. So not that I wasn't entertained throughout large parts of it, but I just think it doesn't really come together in the way it needed to.
Yeah. It felt like they were just doing too much to me in this movie. It's an origin story, obviously telling the story of the Eternals. It starts with a scroll, which I never see as like a very good sign for a movie if you have to do that much downloading before you start the downloading in an origin film. But also one of the best origin films or first films of all time, Star Wars. A New Hope did that. So I mean, it can be done well. It's very like high concept. We're not really dealing with superheroes as much as we are gods and Greek gods with even higher Greek gods above them. And the idea that like planets birth these celestials is a bit out there. So there's some hard stuff to sell. And also, it's a love story. It's stopping the world from apocalypse story. It's a Superman story. It's a Greek god story. There's a lot of stuff going on. It touches on a lot of history, and some very delicate times in history. I think we'll touch on that a little bit more in a second. And so then you think about all these different actors and what they're all good at. and it's like, how do you really get a movie with Kumail and Richard Madden, who are on two very different wavelengths in this movie, and get it all to work? And it just feels very, very difficult. And I actually think my biggest critique of this movie is just uh, the plot device of the deviants, right? So it's basically set up that the Eternals are created by the Celestials to stop the deviants from killing beings on different planets, and the Eternals are sent to protect them. Um, the deviant is the main villain of the movie up until about the last 40 minutes, and then it's just like he shows up one more time, and it's like, okay, deviants are done now. Don't have to worry about them anymore. Just really get like a cool Angelina scene, and then
Yeah.
they're gone. And I just was like, oh, this is really tough, because this feels kind of like the whole idea for the whole movie is that a lot of it just feels like it was baked almost to perfection, and then just big pile of crap on the ground. So
Right.
I don't know. Really hated the deviant stuff. Also, didn't think they looked that cool. Just my own thing, but
No, I mean,
do they ever?
that's the thing about the deviants. They're just kind of CGI cannon fathered the way other CGI character things are CGI cannon fodder. There's nothing
Mhm.
special or new about them, right? And a lot of people who are defending the film are remarking on like how, the movie tries to be different and you just don't like things that are different. Oh, all MCU movies are the same, but yet when you get something different, you don't actually like it. But I kind of call BS on this because you wanted to do something different. What if this movie didn't have deviance at all? You
Right.
know, remember when Barry Keoghan, Druid, one of the actual best
Hmm.
characters in the film? Remember when he starts getting really philosophical for just a second, but then he can't because the movie has to keep going with the plot?
Yep.
There was a far more interesting story somewhere in here if we had maybe even removed the deviance entirely, you know?
Hmm.
And that's kind of my problem is you have this team of 10 Eternals plus Kit Harington's character. And then you have this never-ending plot. It is constant plot. There's almost no scene that isn't plot.
Hmm.
You can't service these characters. You can't foster these relationships in that amount of time. It just the movie does not give space for it to happen. And again, it's a big shame because what you do get of these characters a lot of times is just kind of archetypes, but like there was something there. They actually were colored in a little bit, and like, oh, I would like to learn more about this person, but there's
Hmm.
just no time. And that like conflict, as you said, the conflict of the story really just drops. It's, oh, we don't have
Yeah.
to fight the deviants anymore. We have to uh, control each other.
Stop. Yeah, and
To
stop Superman.
right. But didn't were you surprised when the deviant starts as he starts killing people, right? Salma Hayek, because we learn how she gets killed, and
Mhm.
Gilgamesh, Don Lee's character, gets killed. The deviants became self-aware, as our celestial daddy told us, right? And yet, as they get self-aware and more powerful, right? I think it's Bill Skarsgård's playing it with mocap, right? He starts talking to this main deviant, right?
Mhm.
Like, what the fuck happened? You would have thought he would have actually joined our good Eternals and fought Icarus at the end, based off what he had said an hour ago, where he's like, "We just want to survive. You kept trying to hunt us all down, right? Why the fuck are you teaming up with Icarus then?" Didn't make any
Yeah.
sense to me. I thought like they just didn't figure out what they wanted to do with it. They just kind of threw it away. Having him die in the cave, like it just didn't make sense.
Yeah, I mean, it's not even him versus the Eternals. It's him versus Thena. It's basically like, oh, Thena gets a cool scene before, as her redemption. Because she has, what was it called, like the Mad Weight or something like
Mad
that. Oh, I can't
something. Yeah,
remember.
basically she has too much experience as an Eternal on these planets that her memories are kind of frying her brain. Basically, mad
Yeah,
something. I forgot what it's called.
yeah. She's gone crazy and wants to hurt other Eternals, and um,
Is can't control
I
herself, basically.
yeah, and I actually really liked some of the stuff that happened around that. Her and Don Lee together, I thought was very like cute, nice like
Could have used a lot
friendship.
more of it though.
Yes, absolutely. I could have used a lot more of Druig with Makari. I thought, honestly, when you look at the relationship and that leads the movie, there's no chemistry between Richard Madden and Gemma Chan. You get about 20 to 30 minutes of Barry Keoghan and Lauren Ridloff
Mm,
together at the end of the movie, and you're like, "Ooh,
crackling.
yeah, something's going on here." Um, but to bring it back, yeah, I really feel like they basically just were like, we don't really know how to wrap this up. We're just gonna have him go in this cave, fuck with Thena, and have her redemption here. Cool. All right, but yeah, it didn't make any sense. It also, like you said, the stuff with Druig, I thought that's where the movie was going for a second, and I was like, oh, this is gonna be really fascinating, especially when you see that Brian Tyree Henry probably would have been on his side after his response to sitting in the ruins of Hiroshima.
Right.
Which let's just talk about that real quick.
Hmm.
What the fuck, man? Like, I mean, I don't think it's as egregious as some people have been frying it, but like,
Same.
it's a really tough choice, and especially coming from an Asian director or
Mm,
an director
good point.
of Asian descent. It almost feels just like did she think this all the way? Was she kind of like told she needed to do this by the Marvel machine? It just felt unnecessary, you know. I feel like you could have had him sitting anywhere and having a conversation about how his technology has ruined countless lives, killed countless people. But to have him actually in the ashes of Hiroshima is just really, really tough. What was your thoughts around that?
Yeah, I'm not like super offended by it, but it's heavy-handed at the very
Yeah,
least. You know, in general, a lot of things are heavy-handed. You know,
true, true.
they're like, oh well, we don't have a whole lot of time to convey this, so we'll just do a very quick montage with Brian
Mhm.
Tyree Henry and get it over with. You know, that's kind of how it came across to me, honestly. And in the process, you do something that might not be quite as tasteful as you want, even if it's
Mhm.
a fictional film.
Yeah. So then, just kind of like moving to some of the other problems with the movie, and then we should get to some stuff that we like. I wanted to
Hmm.
go back to the stuff with Richard Madden and Gemma Chan, right? So there, Gemma Chan plays Cersei, who is the main character of this, gets chosen to lead the Eternals after Selma Hayek's Ajax is killed by a deviant, and Icarus is the who people expected to be the next leader. He's the Superman character. He doesn't wear a
Yes,
cape. They actually, pointed this out in the movie that he is Superman, which
yeah.
is kind of crazy.
They
Like, I
name
was just
dropped
like, okay,
Batman too.
yeah. I was like, oh, okay, this is cool. And obviously, if you haven't seen the movie, spoilers. But Richard Madden ends up wanting the uh, implosion of the Earth to have the celestial
Yeah,
born to happen so that they can move on. He doesn't have
their
to carry the
original
weight of this
purpose he's
lie.
committed to.
Exactly. And while the rest of the group is not. And so uh their love is supposed to be a driving force in this. You're supposed to really care about this
Mm.
relationship. I gotta say, man, I did not feel it at all. And I think it's because both of them present as like fairly flat for a lot of the movie. Um, Obviously, they had gone through a breakup prior to the events of this, and Gemma Chan is pursuing Kit Harrington, who's what's his character's name?
Uh,
Dane Whitman,
yeah, the
who
Black
I
Knight
believe
to
is like,
come.
yeah, the Black Knight, exactly. Um, so there's a lot going into it. Did you feel like they had interesting or at least like convincing chemistry?
Eh, yeah, I mean, I can get over that. I think partially because they're both really nice to look at as
They are.
actors, you
Mhm.
know. But again, there's no fucking time. Like they don't have time to have any chemistry because they don't get to fucking talk to each other. It's just plot, 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 plot. You know,
Mhm.
and it's just annoying, man. I mean, fuck, we got our first Marvel sex scene.
Yeah.
In a sense, a
Hell
big
yeah.
deal because Marvel's obviously been very sexless, despite having quote sexy people in it.
And
Been
as
a
you
big thing.
said, they picked two really good people to have it with.
Yeah,
So
I mean, yeah, it's chest up. I don't have a problem with it being very, very PG. It's a Marvel movie. It's this kid seeing this, no problem. But like, they don't they don't actually seem to really pay it off. It's a little it's still a little underwhelming. Um, Honestly, Brian Tyree Henry's relationship with like an unnamed character, his unnamed husband,
mhm.
which obviously has infuriated some smooth brain folk that have a problem with this. I thought that relationship was actually conveyed in a pretty good way, given how
Yeah.
quickly it was done. But yeah, I mean, Icarus and Cersei. I mean, yeah, I mean, honestly, like I was like barely paying attention to because they were split, but also because I had to focus on the mission at hand, the whole
Hmm.
time.
Right.
So again, like if, a different screenplay, different twist on this with all these parts. I just feel like we could have got somewhere better.
Yeah. Well, and I think the reason I bring up that chemistry is because obviously at the end, as they're trying to stop the Celestial's birth, um, Cersei is able to use the energy or the force or the powers of the other Celestials to basically halt this thing from happening.
Yep.
And Richard
With the like
Madden's
mind link thing,
Icarus,
Unimind.
right? And Icarus gets to the point where he can stop her, and because of his love for her, is unable to, or not able to use his powers at that moment. And in fact, she does save the world. Surprise, surprise for a Marvel movie. Um, just in that moment, it's like it's supposed to really hit you that like love is really overcoming this like belief system that it's saving the world in some senses is supposed to be, I think, the overall message. And I'm just like, really? I was just like, dude, you're gonna go all hot, what was it, Outlander or Highlander, whoever from the boys, and just like cut this girl up right now. Like in any
Mhm.
other scenario, would have, because I just didn't buy it. But I thought that ending was kind of lame,
Right.
honestly.
And part of the ending, you have come on Johnny's character, Kingo, decide, I kind of agree with Icarus. I'm not going to fight you guys because I like you, but I kind of think our mission makes sense. You know what? Honestly, I'm glad someone else had that point of view. The problem is he kind of just drops it and dips. Like you could have sown the seeds about these two choices a little earlier, you know,
Mhm.
but they don't. So it's
Yeah,
frustrating.
I have a question. Was like Kingo's powers able to be used in the One Mind? Like, because it seems like wasn't Sprite's powers used even if she was against them
Yes,
stopping the
Sprite's
mission?
powers were used, and I was kind of a little confused about how that worked too.
Yeah.
In general, I kind of had this thought early on, and this is not a problem Marvel or really any superhero movie usually has. Some of the Eternals' powers were just kind of undefined, like the way we start watching the movie. Like, some of them, make sense, right? Like Icarus. Okay, he's Superman, or he's Cyclops and he flies. I got it.
Hmm.
Makari, she's the Flash. Got it. Druig, he controls people's minds. Cool, but like Cersei, Kingo, Fastos, Gilgamesh. I'm like, oh, so Gilgamesh, he's just strong. He makes like a fist thing, and Thena, her power is she makes weapons. Like,
Weapons and is a good
and
fighter.
and Fastos in particular is like he's smart with technology in a magical sense. Like I wasn't really sure what they did. And Kingo just shoots
Yeah.
things out of his hands. That's what it is. Like I don't care. It's just weird that it was kind of vague. This is not,
Yeah.
and it's especially weird that it's vague when there's 10 characters that have this question, or 10 that might have the question.
Including your lead, who, I mean, I get that she's supposed to be discovering that her powers are much stronger than she even realized. Obviously, she takes a deviant, or I shouldn't say obviously, she takes a deviant underwater and makes him into a tree. And everybody's like, I didn't know you could make people into a tree. And that was like a huge thing, which I was like, why is this such a big deal? Like, she just made a deviant into a tree. Like, I don't know. I think there's like worse ways to kill somebody. Maybe better powers. I don't know. But anyways, yeah, I agree. It's like Kingo can shoot power from his hands, and Brian Tyree Henry is just really smart. Got a 1600 on his SATs. Like, all right, I don't know, very strange. Um, but yeah, I felt like a lot of that was just like kind of yada yada. Um, and then we have Ajax. We haven't even talked about Selma Hayek in this.
Mm,
First of all, love
great
Selma
presence.
Hayek.
Yeah.
Oh, an OG favorite of a young Pat Sheehan. Just want to say so.
Mm.
Selma Hayek always on the top of my list. I
Angelina
thought
for
she was
me
great.
as well.
Oh well, there we go. Um, I thought she was a great presence. I thought I could have used a little bit more of her in the movie,
Mm,
honestly. I thought when she was kind of leading the group, obviously her knowledge of what was actually going on, I would have liked to have seen her like have these conversations with Richard Madden's Icarus and like
yeah.
have them discuss like their
Or
feelings
even
around these
Erisham or
things.
something, just so we know as the audience.
Exactly. And I felt like her death was just kind of like looked over. She looked like the Wicked Witch of the West. I don't know if that was intentional, but I was like, man, you just really gonna turn her green? Like, what the hell? I don't know. I just feel like she didn't get enough time
Mhm.
for me. But like you said, we had a lot to get to, so
Yeah.
gotta cut something.
I mean, I was feeling that way, when she dies. At least you got that flashback when you find out how she actually died. I do like the heel turn. I like the twist with Icarus, at
Hmm.
least to like kind of spice it up. Again,
Hmm.
problems still continue, but yeah, I mean, I guess on the other hand, you have the world building aspect to this, right? How the Eternals watch over everyone for 7,000 years. So in the process, we get to see like the Hanging Gardens of Babylon, and we see them in uh, yeah, the
Next,
Mayans, right?
yeah,
Yeah, or the Aztecs, or however that was being killed by the Spanish, whatever was going on, and you know that's cool to think about, right? I also liked how they like wove it in, right? It's like, oh, the Greeks have their names for their gods literally because Athena is there, right? And the Epic of Gilgamesh is because Sprite literally told a story named after her buddy Gilgamesh. I loved all that
hmm,
shit. That's awesome. Icarus flying too close
I
to the
agree.
sun, you know?
He
I love
literally
all
flew
that.
into the sun. He literally flew into
Yeah.
the sun at the end. Come on,
Yeah. I was like, I
come
already
on.
got it. I already got it. You didn't have to actually have kill himself that way though.
Exactly. Why do you have to kill himself? Just fly off.
I
Save him
thought
for
he was
later if you
flying
want.
off and we'd see him again in Guardians 3 or
Yeah.
some shit.
He probably just didn't want to keep doing it or something. I don't know. Why not?
It's fine.
Yeah, but I,
I
I
don't have a big
agree.
problem with that, but
I think most of the history was really cool except for the Hiroshima thing. But like I thought it was cool to see them like exploring prehistoric time and like
mm,
going through history as they uncover this stuff. I loved that.
the dinosaurs, the asteroid actually was just a bunch of deviants raining from the sky to kill them.
Right.
Cool.
Yeah. Um what other parts of the movie did work for you? What else did you like?
Yeah, so I mean, when you have Chloe Zhao directing this film, as you mentioned, just one Best Director, someone famed for her use of natural light and also famed for her use of non-professional actors for the most part. But
Mhm.
you know, that was a really, I think, ballsy, but kind of sends a message as a form of director choice because Marvel doesn't have hasn't had a good track record with auteurs in terms of letting them go until, of course, that finally changed. Right, Ryan Coogler with Black Panther, Taika with Thor 3, James Gunn with the Guardians films. It's kind of let us forget about Edgar Wright's problems when leading him to walk away from the first Ant-Man movie, right?
Mm.
But it didn't feel like much of a Chloe movie to me, apart from, okay, I can tell we shot outside. They were actually on a beach. There is some natural light going on. That's cool. And you get all those ridiculous Kevin Feige quotes about how Chloe shot it outside, like he had never fucking seen outside of a green screen set before. It's like it's all fine, but I just I feel like a different screenplay could have played into her strengths. And Chloe had a part in the screenplay. She's not the only screenwriter, only story credit, but she's part of it. But it just didn't seem like something that could kind of lend itself to her. Because again, it's like all this plot, and in
Mhm.
a sense, you kind of wish this was a little more script doctored just to
Yeah.
make it a little more tight. Because when it's this ambitious, you have 11 new characters. We haven't even talked about Kit Harington because there's not a whole lot to say. But if all
Mhm.
these characters, all this backstory with the Celestials and stuff, it could make it work. But like it and like I don't want to call it ambitious, but it's just you're just trying to do a lot in one film, and I just don't think this form of storytelling was successful because you kind of emphasize the plot over the character, and I wish these characters were a little stronger developed. The ones that live, I don't feel great about still. Like even the stuff with Sprite, maybe we could have got a little bit more of Sprite's desire to be a real functioning member of society before the last 20 minutes of the movie. Like, again, you could have sprinkled that in the same way you could have sprinkled in more of Druid's philosophical questions, or,
Mhm.
just
Yeah, I
there's
mean,
just so much left undone to me.
yeah, with Sprite, the only other scene you really get is at the very beginning in that bar when she's flirting with that guy and he touches her and it goes like through her hand and she just like
Yeah.
leans out. Um, but yeah, I agree. And I mentioned before, like the way Richard Madden played this movie and the way Kumail played this movie were so drastically different. And I do feel like in the range of like uh charmingness or whatever, they're just kind of at giving different performances but still both very charming. I think obviously Madden a bit more reserved, his character is holding his cards a little tighter to his chest. I found Kumail to be great in the scenes he got. It just felt like different movies at times, and it felt like tonally jumping from Richard Madden and Gemma Chan to Kumail and Brian Tyree Henry, who were both just like chewing every single scene down to the pulp, every single as much as they could. It was like, okay, we're gonna and someone like Don Lee is another great example who I thought he just like was enjoying himself the whole time. Every scene he got, he was just crushing it, really, really making the most of it. And it just felt like making all of it work was just really tough. Um, going to a point that you said with Chloe Zhao, I thought some of the like scenic landscape views were really cool. I really liked how the movie opens, like prehistoric times, like that landscape of Mesopotamia. Um, but the like way that it would transition from like really dark scenes to really bright sunsets like in my face, I literally like a bunch of times like had to like cover my eyes and like let them like readjust just because it was like so stark.
Man,
Not necessarily a knock, but it was just some, and you know what it is that Dolby Cinema, bro. Like
yeah,
that
the
the
real color
dark and the
black.
lights are just, yeah, so much better. The sound amazing. But yeah, I thought that kind of was like uh jarring at times. I think intentionally to be like, all right, like boom, you're here now. Um, but it felt like the pieces were all there, but like we said, the recipe just didn't work for some reason. Um, I don't know. We're obviously going to be getting another one.
Don't know
Uh,
about that, to be honest. They didn't exactly say another more Eternals is coming. Get that producer comment that's not necessarily something they need to do. So I don't
bro,
know if Eternals
bro,
2. It's certainly nowhere close because we know the next like 2 years of movies.
we just in the end credit scene we get Harry Styles as
We
Arrow slash Star Fox
correct.
with Barry Keoghan, with who else is there? Lauren Ridloff's Makari, and who was even the other one? I don't
Was
remember.
Fastest with them?
Was it Thena? I think it was Thena because
Yeah.
Fastos and Cersei and Kingo are the ones that get grabbed, something like
Yes.
that.
Yes.
And so there's no way they're gonna introduce Harry Styles and leave this cliffhanger and not bring him
Oh,
back. I would
it's
say,
Thena, Druig, and Makari on the ship.
gotcha, gotcha. Which, you know what? Honestly, cool. Like I would follow those three more and just see what happens between Drew and Makari. Throw
Mhm.
Harry Styles in there being charming.
Yeah.
He's obviously a tie to Thanos, which is kind of like where's this going? Um, but I'm intrigued by it. But we're getting a second one. I highly doubt we'll get Zhao back for that. Um,
Right.
I guess, and it's going to be in space. It seems like, so why would you? It's not her
Well,
strength.
that's the thing. Are we sure we get a second Eternals, or do we just see that crew on the ship show up in somebody
Ah,
else's movie down the line?
good point. Good point.
Whether it's Guardians 3 or even something further out.
That's a really
TBD.
good point.
There's some unsourced talk of Harry having a large like option deal, the way Marvel famously has done for many actors. Again, doesn't necessarily mean they're making like Eternals 2 or some spin-off thing. So I think that they're probably thinking a lot about the reception to this film. Again, it did get a B cinema score. It's not just critics that weren't super enthused with this movie, after all. And you'll probably see that in stark box office drops in the weekends to follow. So they'll probably do some soul searching, some thinking. Maybe the Marvels. I don't know if any of the movies we really know about are the ones, and maybe it's further down the line. So obviously we'll see people again, but maybe we don't see them all again. You know,
Yeah.
I don't know.
Thoughts on the? Go ahead.
Yeah, you got them there.
Oh, thoughts of on the second end credit scene.
Yeah.
We get Kit Harington removing a sword. Obviously, we already mentioned his character is going through the Black Knight, and then we just hear him. But man, it got me jazzed. Mahershala as Blade saying, I don't even know what that was.
Yeah, are you ready?
Whatever
or something? Yeah.
Like, fuck yeah, let's go.
Hell yeah.
How'd you feel about it?
Oh, that's great. I honestly, I wasn't sure what it was. I was like, is that Doctor Strange? Who is that? And I was like, obviously it's familiar. It's like, I love Mahershala. But
Yeah.
I wasn't even thinking it could be Mahershala Ali, because we've gotten, obviously nothing from Blade thus far. He was cast 2 years ago. So that's cool. Obviously, we know where the Black Knight will be popping up. So that's one down,
Yep.
But super jazzed for that. Also, I just wanted to note one thing I did love. I thought was a complete success about Eternals would be Harish Patel as Karun, Kingo's valet.
Oh yeah,
absolutely hilarious every single time. The stuff with the cameras, so good. Everything about him was so good.
Yeah, I mean they really have that character down. Whether it's Peter Parker's friend in all the Spider-Man movies, or just like that side character who just can bring the laughs. And yeah, that was amazing in this. And I thought also brought like a nice like human element, which is just it's like a welcome part to a story about gods, basically, to have like a human being like, oh well, thanks for all you did. Like, guess I'll go die now. I was like, damn, fucking rough. But yeah, shout out to Patel. Any last thoughts before we wrap this up? I think we went like 40 minutes on Eternals.
Yeah, that's a lot for a movie didn't super like too much.
Yeah,
honestly though, if it was a TV show, maybe it could have been executed on better just because you have more time. Normally, I don't say that about films, but this large scope, you want to do it all at once, maybe TV was the way to go. I don't know.
I know. Yeah, I've heard that brought up on a couple of things I've listened to about it, and it makes a lot of sense. You have 10 characters, 10 episode season, like just feels too perfect.
We had Falcon and the Winter Soldier really like scrape for 6 hours, but this, we had to cram it in the 2.5.
Gotta pack it in. Pack it in. Well, anyways, that's gonna do it for us this week. Yeah. Dave, what we got for next week?
Yeah, so at last we have the Silk Sonic album, Bruno Mars, Anderson .Paak. Here at last, we have 3 singles out thus far. Very exciting. The Rebecca Hall Netflix film from Sundance, Passing, starring Ruth Negga and Tessa Thompson, critically acclaimed, will be out midweek. Another Oscar contender, this time a Best Picture contender, Kenneth Branagh's Belfast, about his time growing up in Ireland, is coming out. And we'll also be talking about our Grammy nominations predictions. So much to get into there.
Nothing like Grammy nom time, dude. Award show I don't care about, but we'll talk about. So hit that subscribe on youtube.com/nostalgiapod. Go back and listen to our Anderson .Paak rankings to get ready for the Silk Sonic drop. And also follow us at NostalgiaPod on Twitter. We'll catch you next week.